Yes, people, it's your boy Ashmatic. I'm gonna analyze Spurs versus West Ham 4-1. Let's get straight into it, man. Here we have Spurs. You can see the momentum bar. We dominated pretty much a lot of the game, big periods of the game. And they had very little say. Here's the actual formation: 4-3-3. They had a 4-1-4-1 formation, a little bit different to how they normally set up. And as you can see here, our average positions, Mickey van der Ven acting as a sweeper, and you've got Basuma in between Romero and Mickey van der Ven. And if you can notice as well, the fullbacks are quite wide for us. Dominic Solanke, number 19, is not actually the highest position as a striker. He's quite deep in that midfield block. And that's where he had most of his impact in that particular game, with Son being the highest player and Brennan Johnson on the other side adding width. In between that was our two Roman 10s or Roman number 8s in Madison, and Kulizeski, and they had license to kind of interchange into different positions and find pockets of space where they could hurt teams and hurt the opposition in West Ham. Here it is, West Ham's average position. I'm not really going to focus on them, but go back to the Spurs. This is when we brought our subs on. Benton Core came in number 30, and Papasar was the most notable change coming in. And you can see he's quite wide on that left-hand side. Also bringing on Archie Gray, number 14. That's what you can see there. And Richarlison making his start back after a long period out. But yeah, as we go further into it, we could also see that they brought on subs as well to try and change the game. And they didn't quite get their subs on as fast as they wanted to, because I believe that they wanted to add a bit more protection and add a double pivot. I just brought up this one, this metric, because with Spurs, we're really good at disrupting the opposite team's build-up play. And it shows clearly here, just after Brighton, when it comes to opposition's build-up completion, we disrupt that. And when it comes to the danger zone, where they try to build out from the back in a dangerous position, that's when Spurs win the ball back as well. So we're on high on both units, both metrics there. And we're doing really well on that metric. Also to note, these are our passing triangles. With our passing metrics, you can see again the width that Son and Brennan Johnson gives you. And you're asking, why is Son and Brennan Johnson so wide? We need them more inside in that pitch. We need them to be more like inside forwards to help the team get goals. But I believe the reason why they're so wide is to stretch the pitch when teams do, start with a low block, and we find it hard to penetrate the central areas. The space is out wide, and that's where you typically see Son start, and you might see Brennan start, but they might end up in dangerous areas. And if you can see a little bit further back behind Son, number 7, you'll see number 13, the doggy. You'll see Madison, number 10, and then you'll see Mickey van der Ven, 37. Now that is a nice little diamond going on. Little passing triangles, little passing diamonds. And just focus on that triangle with 13, 10, and 7. Madison, a doggy, and Son. You would see them interchange in a rotation. So sometimes you see a doggy where Son is, and sometimes you'll see Madison where a doggy is, and sometimes you'll see Son in the 10 position, and they would rotate. And also Kulizeski, you can see there drifting off to that left-hand side as well. Number 21, he also adds to that particular attack element. And what that does, it pulls the team to one side, because we've got so many players that could hurt you, and that opens up gaps into the midfield, into central areas. And that's the reason why I wanted to focus on that side. On the right-hand side, it's a little bit more direct. So it's a different build-up pattern to the left-hand side, in a little diagonal, a little pyramid, a little triangle on one side. But on the right-hand side, they're more dynamic, they're more direct, more straight to the point. And it just shows different types of play. So you've got build-up play, rotational play, and then you've got more direct play. So Ange doesn't just typically build up with side-to-side passing or tiki-taka style passing. Sometimes he's a bit more direct, and that's how we win games, as you saw in the second half. And you can also see Basuma's in the center of it, and that stops teams from attacking the center of a pitch, because that's where that is the most dangerous and vulnerable teams will be, through the center of the pitch. And that's why you need a box. You can see almost a box between Mickey van der Ven, Romero, Porro, invert in there, and Madison, and then Basuma in the middle, creating a five with even Solanke at the top, creating a nice central block to stop teams from coming out. And that goes back to the bit I said earlier, where Spurs been the most possession back is in that kind of defensive third of the opposition. And that's why we're so effective at winning that ball. We defend high up. So before, on the previous managers, we might defend in the low block. We're defending in the high block, if you want to look at it that way. So we do defend, but just in a different way. And it's closer to the goal mouth. And that's where we score most of our goals. And you can see West Ham are the opposite. Well, they're defending a little bit lower, a bit deeper, and they're trying to catch us on the transition. But because we did so well defending higher up the pitch, they weren't able to get those counter attacks. And they're not the only team, to be fair. Just moving on into the next bit, I just want to show ball progression and passing and carrying. Romero is at the highest for actual ball progression and ball carrying. And you wouldn't really notice that because Kulusevski is getting all of the headlights, and rightly so. Headlines. Kulusevski is second, and then you've got Mickey van der Ven with Aaron Bissaka, who I thought had an excellent game, with Porro not too far behind. And I think it's more the progressive passing I'm looking at for Porro. He's way out there on that right hand side. He's really dominating, and also another player that's not really been highlighted in this particular game, but it's really a useful weapon in terms of profile. Here you can see some of our final third deep entries, carries, crosses, and you can see in that right hand side again. I'll talk about Porro. Right hand side is dominated by Porro's crosses, carries. On the left hand side, dominated by your doggies ball carrying, and also Madison's carrying as well. Again, I'm bringing up this metrics is flying all over Twitter, and it's been a bit of the theme of the last few weeks, how we do start to slow down when it comes to that 60th minute mark, something that we may need to address with games to come, with a busy period coming up. Also, here is just quick stats. We have 4 goals to their 1, 1.4 xG to their 0.92, 22 shots to their 11 shots, 7 shots on target to their 4 on target, 58% possession stats to their 42% possession stats. And you can see in our box, we dominated that box and had a lot of shots in and around that box, dominating that final third. So I just want to bring up, before we go any further, if I can, I want to bring up how we set up versus how they set up. And as you can see, as I said before, they were in a 4-1-4-1, meaning that they had their 2 centre backs and their full backs in the back 4, with their Rodriguez, as you can see here in the middle. He was that cover, and what you saw with Rodriguez, he had to do a lot of covering down that left hand side because we were building heavily down that left hand side. I did show Madison in this position, your doggy come in this position, and we were creating triangles in these little areas here, as it showed in the map right there. And it came a bit of a nuisance to Wan-Bissaka. And also at times you would see Kulusevski in that free roll come across and then make a small diamond as well. So then you've got a little diamond, as you can see here. We were building up in that particular position. So yeah, that was causing all sorts of problems. But before we get to that particular incident, if I can, we want to talk about, if I remove all of that, we want to just look at what West Ham were doing. What was West Ham doing so well? What were they doing to cause us problems in that 4-1-4-1? And if I just bring over Wan-Bissaka, because I thought Wan-Bissaka was a real nuisance. So obviously we were in a 4-3-3. It wasn't a flat back 4. What you would see is Porro pull wide, a doggy also pull wide, and then what you'd see at times is Madison drop in to help Basuma with ball progression. So at times when we did have the ball, what we could do is we could either go out to Mickey van der Ven. Mickey van der Ven, we could either pass to a Basuma, or you could pass into a doggy or a Madison to help with ball progression, or you could pass it into Vicario. Vicario could come out and become a third centre back the two centre backs would split. And as you can see here, we've got 3 centre backs in this particular area. And also it looked like almost if a doggy pushed up into where Madison would be alongside Kulusevski, you would have 3 players in front. So you'd have almost a 2-3-2-3. Now, why is a 2-3-2-3 important? Let's bring those centre backs a little bit wider. So the reason is because you've got more passing lanes, you've got more angles to beat the press. Let's put Porro a little bit wider. So sometimes you make the centre backs go wider and you make the centre backs become more narrow. And the reason why you do that is to draw them in. Once you draw them in, then there's more gaps in between in those little half pockets, those little spaces where you can build out from the back. So I thought I just mentioned that. But coming back to what West Ham did, if I go back to the other video, let's bring back the other stage. Here you can see with Basuma, the problem was Bowen picked up pockets of space off that right hand side and he jumped in the half space in behind Son, in behind Madison, and it left Basuma to cover a lot of ground, either to his left or to his right. And because he's in between the lines, Bowen is able to pick this ball up and cause a lot of havoc. Todibo has that ball on that right hand side, and he's able to find a pass directly into Bowen, causing us a lot of problems. And that's what maybe Ange saw as a problem going back into it. So if I just bring back the actual map again, I'm going to look at it and think, okay, cool. We've got Souček here, and we've got Bowen in this pocket of space, and Wan-Bissaka pulling as a winger. So as he's pulling as a winger, Bisuma's got a lot of work to do because he's either got to think about Paqueta and he's got to think about Bowen. Not only just that, what Antonio was doing, Antonio was sitting back into this position here. So he gave him lots of jobs to do, lots of jobs to think about. So then a doggy now had to swap back with Madison. But because does a doggy go into Bowen? Does he pull him outside or does he track Wan-Bissaka? He was tracking Wan-Bissaka. And because Bowen was coming in here, it forced Mickey van der Ven to follow him. So that was becoming a problem because you've got a centre back out of position. And then you've got Bowen that's trying to get into that half space and into the box and cause trouble and allow Kudos to come off the opposite side and create trouble in that incidence. But if we go to the actual, let's go back to the actual footage as well. So here you can see the actual goal where I think Mickey van der Ven, was covering that space, but the doggy was a little bit too tight, in my opinion, to Bowen. And what Bowen does well, he slows it down and then he speeds it up, and that's how he beats him for pace. But I've circled Souček because Souček peeled off from that right hand side into the midfield as a box crasher, causing a problem for Romero. As you can see, Romero's looking at him, Porro's looking at him. Whose responsibility is it? Porro decides to go with him, and as a result, he pins back Porro. As you've seen here, he pins him back, and now all of a sudden, you've got the doggy who's been turned, and you're seeing Mickey van der Ven's got his hands behind his back, and he should be really able to deal with any ball that Bowen hits in here. Also, you've got Basuma at the near post, Madison in the box, Son obviously on the edge, and also you've now got Paqueta who's also free as well. So you've got Paqueta that's free, and now I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, who's picking up Paqueta? Obviously, you've got that late run happening. Porro gets dragged out of position into that back post. Because Souček he's trying to mark him, but it leaves Kudos off that back post free and Paqueta free. And you're thinking, who's picking up these two players here in this position? Who's picking them up? The ball comes in, and as I've circled here, they're free, they're in total space. As that's happened, like Johnson's tried to make the recovery back to stop it happening. And funny enough, Kudos hits the ball, but he doesn't hit it cleanly. He actually hits it into the ground and it loops over Porro, who's on the post, and it goes into the back of the net. And you're thinking, could that been avoided? Of course. There was a few mistakes there that defensively we would not let you know, a doggy be so naive and get turned so easily. And then also you want Mickey Van der Ven to block any crosses, but then he's getting pulled wide out of position. Here, the next clip I've got the actual goal. So it's going to go straight to the goal, and it was actually Kulu here that starts the initial press with Poro not far behind, helping that press. And you can see Solanke there. He's in a good position. And what happens here is in that position, Solanke does well, picks that ball up, nicks it off one of their players. I think it's actually Suchek. He nicks it off. That ball happens in that kind of defensive third, sorry, and then that's when you see Madison. Madison picks up that ball, and he's got all that space. And the reason why I was talking about earlier about where we win the ball, it looks like a counter attack all of a sudden because West Ham, they're on the front foot. They just scored a goal. They're going for another goal, but then because we've nicked that ball high up, Madison's able to win that ball with acres of space to travel. And the reason why I like Madison in his positions because you need someone that's clinical. If you've got someone other than Madison in there, are they going to find the right pass? He's got three different options here. And I've circled West Ham's backline. They're very, very narrow in this instance. He picks up Kulusevski. Kulusevski, you can see down the channels. Son's down one channel. Kulusevski's one channel. And Johnson's the furthest forward because obviously with Solanke, he's the one that won the ball back. So he's not in the actual picture at this moment. Now you've got Johnson making a run, distracting the back line in between the two centre backs. Obviously, you've got Madison that made the initial carry. You've got him running in between the centre back and the fullback, which gives space for Kulusevski to run across. He runs across and then he shoots, and that ball is surrounded by many, many players, and that blindsides the keeper. And lots of people said the keeper should do better, but that's the reason why he can't see it. Gets a late hand to it, and it's a weak hand, but it's a fantastic shot. He has enough power in it. And as an attacker, all you want to do is find the corners. Kulusevski does that on his stronger foot, finds the corners, hits both posts, and goes in. We're going to go straight into that second goal in the second half. And the reason why we're going to go straight into it is because actually, before we go into it, let's go back into the tactics board. And on the tactics board, I would say with Spurs in that first half, especially, you saw Rodriguez and Suchek all go back or retire into a low block. So Kilman dropped in, Todibo dropped in, Emerson dropped in here as well. You also saw Wan-Bissaka. Let's bring Wan-Bissaka back. And it was almost a back five, I felt, because Bowen also would drop back in to help defensively, or sometimes it was Antonio that would be as a fullback. Kudos also had to help out as well. So you had like a back five with a back four, which Spurs had to break down at times. And at times I thought Spurs really struggled with ideas on what to do. So that's why you normally typically see Mickey Van der Ven and Romero in that kind of in their half, squeezing the pitch, trying to defend high up, win that ball back. And what happened was Solanke often tried to jump off the two centre backs to kind of draw them out to create space in behind for Johnson to run into. So Johnson could sometimes, if we get him highlighted, run into this space. And the idea was that if you've got Solanke moving into that space, Johnson would score a lot of goals. And that's the reason why we've done so well. Also, at times, what I wanted to see more of to break down this difficult block was Kulusevski, Solanke, and Poro create a box. So what do I mean by a box? If you create a box here, that basically allows these players, if they can rotate in positions. When I say rotate, I'd say Poro rotate of Johnson and Johnson rotate with Solanke. So that's the main rotation I want to see. Kulusevski sometimes rotating with Solanke, and that could draw these players out of position. That would make Emerson pull him out of position, make him come into these players, and that would open up certain passing lanes for Johnson to get into. So if Johnson also tucked in, that would allow Poro to arrive here down the sides, and you could find crosses, which did happen at times. It did happen where there was a cross that came in, and then Brennan Johnson came in and he almost scored a header off the back of it. And that's what that right hand side can work on, even though I did speak about us going direct at times, being really forefront and just literally getting um being assertive, being direct, not always trying to build up, just literally going for the jugular. But what you've got to do is bait the press. And how do we bait the press? By creating a little bit more uh we need to sit back a little bit at times and create distances to draw them to us, to create space in behind. So that's what I thought we could have done a bit more. As I've already showed here, Kulusevski was the free roamer. He would sometimes end up here. And also Madison would swap over. Sometimes you'd see Madison in this position and Kulu drop in and link up with Son in this position. And what I did see with Son would drift in at times. Kulusevski would end up here. And that's how we saw that shot where he kind of went on from his left foot into a right foot and got a shot and was unfortunate not to score from this particular opportunity. So he actually gets a shot off here and it doesn't quite go in. But again, this is the old Son. But because we're doing rotations and we're seeing Kulusevski change position with Son, a doggy sometimes change position. Sometimes the doggy would get down that line. And he was the one that fired a cross in. And he fired a cross in, and Solanke also was able to get on a few opportunities. Sorry, it was Porro. It was Porro with that shot, that volley, where he almost got in because of a doggy crossing. So that's the reason why sometimes you can't be saying Sons, oh, he's always hugging that touchline. He's washed now, he's done. No, it's about the team and how we perform as a team, not as an individual. But yeah, let me just go back to the actual game itself, bring it back to the stage. And I'm showing here when we did bring on Pat Matasar. Pat Matasar, it was a brave decision because Madison was doing really well in the final thirds, and he was the most creative player, I believe, in the Premiership that actual game week, and had the most creative passes since Darren Anderton in 1993. Um, so that's also quite interesting. But yeah, Ange's been heavily criticized for not making substitutions, and he made a brave decision because if he got it wrong with Madison doing so well, he could have been crucified for taking Madison off, our most creative player, on and bringing on Sarr. But just before I talk about this particular incident, the passes before this actual goal actually came up, we made about at least 10 to 8 passes we put together. And what we did was we shift the ball from the left-hand side to the right-hand side into the center and then back to the left. So we were trying to shift the low block of West Ham, pull them apart to create a space and find an opening. And we were patient in our build-up. And I know a lot of people hate the horseshoe type of football, hate the sideways passing, but sometimes if you're patient in your build-up, you get your just rewards. Here's Souček getting pulled out wide instead of being in that half space that was occupied before. In this half space before, when I was talking about the triangles, you would have seen Madison in that position. But because the doggy was further back, he was able to run into that space and arrive late. In fact, I think I can show that as well. If I just bring the stage back up again, I want to just demonstrate that. So because a doggy was arriving late and you've got just Kulusevski on, Madison's no longer on the pitch. So let me just bring that up. So Madison had been taken off at this stage. And if I can find Sarr, bear with me. Sarr came on. Yep. So Sarr was on the pitch. And what Sarr did, he added the second pivot. So it was more protection, stopping that counter attack from Bowen. Bowen was going to come out here, and that would stop Mickey van der Ven from pulling off wide here to stop that, counter attack. Sarr was there to help with that counter attacking threat. But because Madison's no longer there, Kulusevski is out here. We have the Sumo out here. The doggy now has that space to run into. Um, with that space to run into, he's starting from a further back position. So he's able to run it into that position, if that makes sense. He's able to run to the byline and he's able to create that cutback for Basuma. Let me just rub that out. And he's able to run right to that byline right there and then do the cutback into the Basuma who arrives there late. So if we just look at that here, that's what I show here. He runs into that space in between both of their players. They're not able to pick him up. It's too late by the time they do find them. He has the intelligence to pause on the ball, get his head up, get on the half turn. And what that does, they think he's going to pull the ball across the box. So all of them are run to the byline, creating a bag of space for Basuma. Basuma runs into that space, arrives at the right time, and slots it home for 2-1. Then all of a sudden, West Ham have to come out because they're thinking, oh, Spurs only look good on the transition. That's going to be the current theme at the moment. But we're forcing teams out because if they go a goal down, we've gone on top. West Ham have to go up. And what happens is they do a goal kick out. Basuma actually wins the ball back before it gets to Son. Son gets the ball, and Son, normally you'd see him out wide. You'd see him out on the left-hand side, but he's dropped into the midfield. And now this is what is an interesting point because we're talking about players taking responsibility, players becoming leaders on the pitch. So some people associate being a leader with talking. Some people associate being a leader with actions. And the fact that he made that decision by himself was out of position because a lot of people talk about positional play. Players have to be in a system, be rigid. You know, if it's Pep Guardiola, I don't want to mention him, he's a top coach, but Pep would be furious if Son had vacated his position out on the left and no one else was there on the left. Do you know what I mean? Son comes out, breaks all the rules, gets on the ball on the half turn, gets his head up, and he can see runners now. He can see Solanke. If he looks for Solanke, there's a lot of people criticizing Solanke for not getting goals. But if he actually looks up, plays a straight through ball, Solanke's onside. Solanke might get a goal. That's what I would say. A one critique, find Solanke in that position. Not to say that what he did was wrong. Do you know what I mean? If I'm just being a nitpicker, Sar's making a run as well. Being box to box. You see Kulusevski there on the right. It eventually does go to Kulusevski. Kulusevski, he does that ball from the outside of his boot, which is wonderful. Now Kulusevski has a chance to either drive that ball into the area, play a ball across into Solanke or Johnson, because both of them are there, or even take it on himself. So he's got options as well. He decides not to, and Solanke obviously doesn't get his goal. But my thing is, could Solanke or Johnson make a run to the near post to make Kulusevski's mind up? That's what I'm asking. That never happens, and I'm showing it there. He can make that run into the angle. Obviously, their fullback is missing because they've pushed high up from that big kick from Areola when he tried to kick it up the pitch. Wan-Bissaka's played as a winger. Emerson's high up as well. And because that space is vacated and we recognize it quickly, Kulu holds on to it. Son shouting, hold it, when I'm coming. He sees him running, makes the run, and does a cheeky reverse pass. With a cheeky reverse pass, again, Son could play it across the box for either Brennan Johnson, Solanke, or even Sarr to tap in that far post. He gets a shot. If it ricochets, any of them could pick up a goal. It goes into an own goal. Perfect. Now we've got the momentum. Obviously, the ball happens over here. There's a little passage of play that happens here where West Ham are trying to force the play, and at the same time, Locatelli is trying to get his players on. He wants to get a double pivot on. He wants to bring on Soler. He wants to bring on Alvarez to bring on more defensive stability. Can't get them on, and we're just taking advantage of that. Romero tries to play a ball out to Kulusevski. It doesn't happen. Charges that ball back in midfield when West Ham have got the ball. Sarr doubles up with him, and I'll talk about that double pivot with Basuma just behind. Sarr wins that ball with his aggression, with his tenacity, with his energy, gets that ball back, wins the ball, gets his head up, carries the ball high up. And what is his first thought? First thought is, can I get that ball into Son? Doesn't think about it, just literally gets his head up. Can I pin that ball up? Wan-Bissaka also playing that right wing position because that's what he wants from his fullbacks. He wants to get his fullbacks super high and wide. I heard a lot of Spurs fans, they were complaining that our fullbacks invert a lot. Where here's an example: when you have your fullbacks out wide, you still leave space in behind because that's the space that was left behind by Son. Son's exploited that space and he's taken out all four of these players with this pass. With this pass, he's taken out all four of these players. I've gone way too far back. Whoops. Um, yeah, he's taken out all four of these players with this pass, as I've circled here. As that pass is coming out, you can see so Debo's isolated 1v1, and Kilman, his partner, is way out of position. He's not close to him. With that angle, Son can go straight down the line, go towards him, or go on the inside. He doesn't know which way he's going to go. Lovely, gets his feet up, does a couple steppies, unbalances him, puts him off balance by doing that as well. By not just doing the steppies by the time. He uses a body feint, he kind of adjusts his body, he kind of gets it onto his weaker foot. Todido doesn't know what foot he wants to hit it with, and that's what puts him off balance and gives him half a second, half a yard, and that allows him to hit that ball early. As he's hit that ball early, like, he has enough power to beat the goalkeeper at the near post. A lot of people say he shouldn't be beaten by your near post, but it's by the power is going to beat the keeper regardless of what post. Maybe the keeper's thinking he's going to go cross him, and that hesitation allows him to beat him by the near post, because in that area you would normally hit across the goalkeeper. Anyway, here I've shown the defensive cover of Star. Basuma now is allowed to come across because you've got your two centre backs in a central position now. Two centre backs in a central position where they should be, with Sar on the edge as well, acting as another protection, a layer of protection, and allows Basuma to help out in the wide areas for either Porro or Brennan Johnson in that side, on that right hand side, and he does a good job on mopping up and winning that ball back. But yeah, that is Spurs analyzed to a T, from your boy Ashmack, man. That's what happened, man. So, like, guys, if you've got any more thoughts, if I've missed out anything, let me know in the comments as well. I should be doing some more pieces on here. But yeah, thanks. And you can catch me on Spurs Kings TV. We're gonna analyze it in the panel. And every Tuesday, we're gonna go a deeper dive on it as well and talk a little bit more in a group. So catch me, Ben, and a few others as well. But peace, guys.